Well, hello and welcome back, Internet. Again, my name is Robert Nooner. I'm a realtor here in Northern Nevada. And this is going to be part two of a two-part series on whether it is better to rent or to buy property. I personally believe buying property is far superior to renting. When you rent, you're basically burning money. It's an expense and not an investment. At the end of the rental period, you have no assets, you have nothing to show, no equity, and you have just basically burned your money. But if you buy, there are many advantages to buying. We'll talk about those as well. So we're going to go over the pros and cons of each, both renting and buying. So we're going to start out with renting. And renting does have some advantages. Number one, to start with, renting has a lower upfront cost. First, last month's rent, maybe a deposit. Now, you may have to sign a lease, which is somewhat of a liability, and that you're locked in for a period of time. And often there is a way to get out of it, but usually it will cost you more money. But generally, renting is a much lower cost of getting a place to live. So, and then part two is flexibility. If you're not on a lease or your lease is expired and you're just going month to month, if you want to move, very easy. You just tell the landlord you're going to leave, and you can easily change locations and move to another apartment or a house, or if you want to leave the state, you can do that because you have really no responsibilities, but you're also not building any equity. So yes, flexibility is one of the advantages of renting. And one of the other advantages that people often talk about is there's no maintenance, which means that you're not responsible for things that go wrong. And I've got a great example. When I was renting, um, I had a faucet in the bathroom that literally broke off and water was squirting everywhere. Not a problem. I shut the valve off. I called the landlord. He sent a maintenance person over. They replaced the fitting. They cleaned up all the water and debris, and I was back in business. Didn't cost me a dime. Didn't cost me a minute's worth of my own labor. That is one of the advantages of owning or not owning a home to renting a home or renting an apartment. You're not that responsible for that. So on the cons, first of all, it's not an investment, and I really want you to watch part one where we go over sort of a general scenario of both renting and purchasing, and the fact that when you buy a home, you're building equity. Every mortgage payment builds some equity, and then the increase in value of the home um, basically is your money. So if you buy a $300,000 home and it increases 22%, you've made $66,000, haven't lifted a finger. That's your money, that's your equity in that home. So, again, home values are one of the big advantages of owning a home. And but it's not one of the advantages of renting. So, let's well, one of the other disadvantages of renting is that you're subject to rate hikes. And I'll give you a great example. There was a woman not far from me, a good friend of mine, and she had been living in this home for about 14 years. And her rent was fairly low because the landlord hadn't raised that rent for quite some time. Unfortunately, someone offered him a great deal more in rent for that property, and he decided to raise the rent on my friend. And He didn't raise it by just 25 or $30. He raised it by about 700 because that's what the other person was willing to offer to rent that home. It was a very nice place. So basically, she could not afford that, and we worked to try to get her into her own home. So again, rate hikes are a risk you run when you're renting property. Also, you have no control. If you want to put a garden in, you may not be able to do that. And That person I talked to in her lease, it said that she was not allowed to paint any of the rooms. In fact, she lost her security deposit because her son, being the youngster that he was, decided to paint his room um, in murals that he designed. Uh, that was great for him. Unfortunately, when they moved out, the landlord saw that it was painted, had to have it repainted, and that came out of her security deposit. So you don't have any control over the property if you're renting. I've got another example too. A person wanted to put a hot tub in. They were on the ground floor of an apartment building, and they had a little patio out behind their apartment. And the landlord said no, they could not put the inflatable hot tub that he was going to buy on that patio. The landlord was afraid that if it broke, water would come in the house, it might damage part of the lawn. So um, uh, he could not, he didn't have the right to put his little hot tub on his little patio. So again, you give up those rights when you rent, which are some of the cons of renting. Um, and in just a few minutes, we'll go over the pros and cons of owning a home. And it has rights and responsibilities as well. So, again, just to sort of recap, some of the pros and some of the rights that you have in renting a property is that the barriers to entry are very low. Again, first, last month's rent, security deposit, there may be some other deposits. Actually, I do know of a renter that's paying an extra $125 a month because they've got a little dog. Um, and that's just the way it is. Also, you lose that flexibility when you rent. You can't move, or you can move much more easily when you're renting, excuse me, and well, which makes it a little tougher when you own the home and have to sell it. And finally, um, there are no maintenance costs. Another pro to renting. And some of the cons are you have no investment, you make no money on the increased value of the property, and you basically get no equity in your rent payment. And please watch part one where I go over this in some detail, probably too much detail, but in some detail. And also, as a you have no control over the property, which is another, I guess, con to renting, is that you can't do a lot of things. You may not be able to paint, you may not be able to put in a garden, you may not be able to put in an air conditioner, for example. And I have other examples we can talk about in maybe a future video. So, and also, you're subject to rent hikes when you're renting property. If you have a mortgage, you spell out those payments right up front, and you spell out the terms of the purchase right in the very beginning. So rate hikes, you know exactly what you're going to pay because you're not going to be subject to any rate hikes. So that's the pros and cons of renting and a recap. And in just 1 minute, we'll go over the pros and cons of owning a property. Okay, well, I want to conclude this part two by having a frank discussion about the pros and cons of purchasing a home, not renting. So, some of the pros of purchasing a home are basically that you build equity. You build equity through your mortgage payments and also the appreciation of the home, which I think is one of the biggest advantages of owning property. Is how much of the wealth of this country was built, and it's often been recognized by the government as the best way to build wealth for the entire country. Hence, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae, and FHA, and many of the other organizations that were set up by the Roosevelt administration to get people into homes. So, building equity is probably one of the biggest advantages and the pros to purchasing a home. Um, and one of the other big advantages is that you have much more control over your property. If you want to put in a hot tub, if you want to put in a deck, if you want to paint the walls black or paint the living room red, which I've done once before, you can do that. It's your property and it's your taste and your decision of how to make your house livable. So again, control over the property is another great advantage of purchasing a home. Also, you can make changes like I discussed. You can, in fact, one of the first things I did when I moved into my home in Portland, Oregon, was to add 220-volt circuitry to my garage. And by doing that, I was able to put in many power tools and air tools. And I built this airplane in my garage. And one of the big advantages I had was I could rewire it to be able to use more potent tools to be able to build that airplane. So, and again, that's just sort of follows through with making changes and upgrades. If you want to change the stove from electric to gas, which I did, you can do that. No one's there to stop you. You own the property. You can do it as long as it fits within your HOA or your local zoning rules. You can make modifications and changes and upgrades to your home. Now, some of the cons of home ownership are fairly straightforward. There's a higher cost of entry. With renting, you first last month's rent and maybe a security deposit. If you want to buy a home, you've got to come up with a down payment, which is usually on a conventional loan 10, 20, or 30%, which can be quite substantial. And there are other programs which are far less, but you do have to come up with that down, and also closing costs. Everyone's going to want a little piece of the pie when it comes to closing that property. There's also going to be homeowners insurance, and that's something else that you need to consider when you're buying a home and be ready to pay. So, and also there's less flexibility in home ownership, and by that I mean if you're renting and you want to move to Austin, Texas from Reno, Nevada, you inform the landlord that you're leaving at the end of the month and pack up and go. If you own a home, it's not quite that simple. You're going to have to go ahead and list the home on the market and sell it and purchase a home in another area. So it's less flexible as far as that as home ownership, although I don't think that's a real big deal breaker. However, you want to consider that when you're considering home ownership. And the final thing that I found really interesting is that most folks don't consider the fact that if you own the home, you're responsible for the maintenance. If I rent a home and the faucet breaks, I call the landlord. He sends a repairman out. They fix it, and I have no problems, no costs, and no headaches. If you own a home and the same faucet breaks, you've got to figure out if you're going to have a plumber do it, or you're going to try to do it yourself. You have to buy the materials. And so that is an expense that most folks don't really consider. And I'll give you a great example. I had a neighbor move in across the street from me in Portland, and her lawn kept getting long. And I like mowing lawns, so I would go over and mow it for her periodically. And so one day she came out when I was mowing the lawn, and I said, I don't mind doing this, but are you going to start mowing your own lawn? And she said, well, when I bought the house, I didn't realize I needed a lawnmower. And so she did not have a lawnmower. And I said, you have to have some things to be able to maintain the house. You have to pay someone to do them, or you have to buy the tools to do it, like a lawnmower, like a hedge trimmer. I said, even if you want to plant flowers out front, you've got to have a shovel. So most folks don't really consider that when they're buying. And some folks actually put far too much emphasis on that. I've got a neighbor who basically used the example of not having a lawnmower as to why he didn't want to buy a house. He said his rent was fairly reasonable, and he didn't want to have to mow the lawn or do any of the other maintenance to the house. Well, I think it's not really a valid issue, because it's not really a deal breaker for me, and I don't think it should be a deal breaker for you. So anyway, in this video, I wanted to sort of put out the basically pros and cons of owning a home as opposed to renting. First part of this video was on the advantages and disadvantages of renting. And again, the rights and responsibilities, you do have the right to take the value of the home's equity. You have much more control over the property, and you can make changes and upgrades. But also you have responsibilities in that you have to maintain the home. You have to go ahead and list it if you want to move and sell it. Those are issues. Make sure the house is in shape to sell. And also, if you want to buy, you've got to have a higher closing costs or initial outlay to get the house purchased. So anyway, I can help you with all those things. I am a licensed realtor here in Northern Nevada. I go as far as Winnemucca, as far south as Hawthorne, and the complete Washoe Valley, Fernley, Fallon. I can help you anywhere in that area to basically purchase a home or sell your home. And if you're going to purchase a home, you have to have fairly good credit and at least some assets to be able to buy the house. And I can help you. I work with a lot of the largest mortgage companies here in the area. And also, I do have contacts with some of the credit restoration folks here in town. So if your credit rating isn't great, give me a call. I'll get you in touch with someone who can help you with that. And if you're getting ready to buy, I can help you prepare for that. I can help you find a home. I can help you talk to mortgage folks to find out what you can do to help finance your property. So give me a call, 775-230-7064. I'll put my contact information in the description below, and also have a website. If you're thinking about selling your home, I'll put a QR code and a link to my website where you can enter some data on your property and you can get a fairly good estimate of the value of your home in the current market. But also realize that if you list with me, I will do a fairly thorough, comprehensive analysis of the market in your area, and we can basically set a good price to sell your home for what you believe. So anyway, Robert Nooner, Sierra Nevada Properties, in 775-230-7064. And I'll see you in the next video. I plan to do at least one of these lists every 2 weeks. I'm hoping to sneak one in every week if I can, but selling real estate takes a lot of time and I'm quite busy. But I can help you. Give me a call, text me, email me, and I'll see that you are taken care of and you can become a homeowner and take advantage of the real value of home ownership in this country. Anyway, thanks, Internet, and we'll see you on the next one. Oh, yeah, don't forget to basically subscribe, like, and ring the bell, and so you won't miss any of the future videos I produce. This channel, again, is going to be much more, hopefully, is going to be more fun than some of the others, in that I'm going to try to really emphasize the value and the reason I just love my adopted state of Northern Nevada. Thanks so much. We'll see you in the next one.